Hello, I'm Oka Brittlegill.
And I'm Jonathan Bendovic.
This is episode 2 of the Science Partnership podcast. Our aim is to educate, enlighten and entertain you, and you certainly don't need to be a science geek to enjoy our podcasts. Each episode will be covering a couple of topical science news items in our science reports. Whichever of us is best placed to talk about the subject will be quizzed about it, so expect some lively debate.
In Brainy Hacks, we expose a hack who has credulously reported a science issue without questioning its blatant stupidity. Lots of different publications were responsible for this one, so we don't have any single hack to single out this time. But we do have a particular source for this news item. That source is perhaps one of the most expensive and inefficient one ever known to man, and that is NASA. NASA recently reported on some experimental work they'd done regarding the replacement of phosphorus with arsenic in bacteria. Oka's been looking into it. Oka, tell me, why would we have phosphorus in bacteria in the first place, and what would we want to replace it with arsenic for?
Well, it appears that we actually wouldn't, Jonathan. This article burst onto the scene with lots of alien connotations with it, because if an organism could use arsenic instead of the usual chemicals for life, which are things like carbon and phosphorus and nitrogen and oxygen, which is universal to organisms on Earth, we were actually looking at something which could possibly be alien. Or if it wasn't already alien, it could be taken somewhere, an alternative place in the universe which was arsenic based. So there was a lot of possibilities and a lot going on about this set of experiments. And what actually happened was some bacteria were taken from an already arsenic-rich environment on Earth, which is Lake Mono. And these organisms were captured and taken to the laboratory and grown in increasing concentrations of arsenic. So they were taken from the natural environment and encouraged to use arsenic as part of their metabolism. Now, this is not an unusual thing, because there are bacteria and archaeons and various classes of mostly unicellular animals that can use alternative sources of energy, such as the sulfur bacteria and the algae that photosynthesize. There are lots of different ways of getting your daily bread if you're an organism on Earth, but this was taking it a step further and stating that the bacteria actually took the arsenic into their DNA. So the less phosphorus there was in their environment, the more they were using arsenic instead. Now that's a very big step for a biological organism, because the proteins that are used as part of the metabolism are very specific, and to substitute one atom for another is actually very difficult, and it's actually proved very difficult to do with genetic engineering as well. So there was a lot of doubt when this research came out, and there were several problems. The first one was that chemical substitution of phosphorus in DNA was never actually proven. As I said, it's a very difficult thing for an organism to do, and it would be taking the boundaries of what we know about organisms a little step too far. And when the research was published, without it being peer-reviewed, it was very quickly noticed that the methodology, which has to be stated so that the experiment can be reproduced by other people, other research institutions usually, when they looked at the methodology that was used, they noticed that the bacteria were cultured, and part of the process of refining them was using water, a water-based gel, which would have actually dissolved the arsenic salts. So it's very doubtful whether the experiment could actually be reproduced. So sadly, it actually all came to not very much.
Well, that is a bit of a shame, isn't it, Oka? Because it sounds to me like that really was perhaps the first opportunity we had to observe an alternative biology to almost everything else we see around us, certainly on our planet, and it looks like it's been let down by premature publication before peer review, and it sounds as well like the actual methodology is so poor that that we don't have any repeatability either. It doesn't sound like good science to me, Oka.
No, it wasn't. It was a bit of a storm in a teacup in the end, which was very sad. I mean, the ideas were great, and it would make a great science fiction film, but as for science, I think the Brainy hacks need to go on holiday.
Yes, I'd say so too. Perhaps you could go somewhere warm and sunny and recover from this terrible, terrible winter, which I understand is the coldest since records began.
Let's not get on to global warming, shall we, Jonathan? Should we save that for another time?
Well, actually, as it would happen, Oka, I recently heard that global warming is being rephrased now, and what the sheeple out there have to be led with now is something called global. What's it called? Oh, it's climate disruption rather than global warming. Disruption.
Yes, they did hint at that when they said that global warming was going to make things sometimes colder and sometimes wetter and sometimes windier. So, yes, I think they're changing that. Maybe they should go on holiday too.
Yes, on a one-way ticket. Thanks, Oka.
Thank you. Bye.
It's time for Pat on the Back.
Old wives' tales and modern myths are always a great source of pseudoscience and entertainment. It's been very cold recently here in the UK, and lots of people have been reporting to their GP with flu symptoms or colds and the like. So let's talk for a moment, Jonathan, about going outside in the cold without a hat on and you ending up with a virus. How does that happen?
Well, this has got to be one of the most durable old wives' tales I've ever heard. That going out in the cold gives you a cold. Yes, the word's the same, but of course a cold is a self-limiting viral infection, usually the upper respiratory tract, and it is most certainly not acquired simply because you've gone into the back garden to feed the birds without wearing a hat. No, I think that in the wintertime we see a lot more colds and flu because people tend to be in close proximity to each other indoors for long periods of time, and hence there's lots and lots of opportunity for transmitting the virus from person to person. As you know, the mechanism of transmission is usually coughing and just like that, in fact, coughing, sneezing and so on, so that those around you in close proximity to you are likely to become infected if they're not careful.
Well, yes, I have to agree with you on some of those points, Jonathan. But actually, on this one, I think the old wives have got a point.
No.
A lot of old wives' tales are actually embedded in our working class culture, I believe. And especially when people used to live in close proximity with each other, generation after generation. And they used to do a lot of observation, because women didn't, of course, work outside the home throughout all of our 20th century history. So I think they had a bit more time to observe, and I think this one is observed correctly. And I think the science behind it is that when you go out into a cold environment, for instance, you come away from fire and you go out for a walk, or you walk to work, or you go shopping, your core body temperature will begin to drop because your extremities are exposed to the cold. And a lot of physiological things have to actually happen when you get cold. For instance, your blood vessels will divert their flow from the extremities to the core parts of your body to keep them warm, because it's absolutely vital that those organs stay warm. And this is quite a lot of hard work. So I think that if you were to go past someone, as you say, who unhappily were to sneeze all over you, and you were to then pick up a droplet infection with the virus in it, because your body's in a slightly compromised position, your immune system has more trouble fighting it off. So I think people who go outside in the cold and allow themselves to get too cold and then become exposed to a virus are more at risk.
Now, that's certainly an interesting viewpoint that I have to admit I've never heard before. That doesn't mean it's wrong, merely that it's new to me. So what you're saying is that if you're spending a lot of time outdoors, then your immune system may be less able to deal with an initial virus infection. I can't really argue with that. I'm really not convinced, though, that housewives are a good source of statistical data which we can say gives us reliable evidence that winter virus infections are more likely if you happen to be going outside a lot.
Well, perhaps the old wives aren't a source of statistical data or any kind of scientific accuracy, because most of them wouldn't have had much in the way of scientific education as we are lucky enough to now. But I'm sure that they would have observed that people who stay indoors, keep warm, look after themselves, eat well, drink lots of clear fluids, or have a nice cup of tea and stay warm, they're less likely to fall prey to a virus that happens to be in the atmosphere anyway. So whilst it may not be statistically significant, there may be an observation which gave rise to this particular pat on the back. What do you say?
Well, I think it's probably time to go home now, and I'm going to put my scarf, gloves and hat on and wrap up warm, because I don't want to catch my death of cold. Thanks, Oka.
Sprouts for tea, Jonathan.
Oh, I just can't wait.
You've been listening to the Science Partnership podcast. The Science Partnership is a non-profit organisation based in the UK. You can find us at www.sciencepartnership.co.uk.
Why not pay us a visit and use our forum to tell us what you think and to join in the lively debates?